Hi everyone. With us today is Christopher Smith from England. And first of all, Christopher, thank you very much for taking this time for us. And we really appreciate that gesture.
Good to be with you, Vipula.
Right, Christopher. Christopher is the author of The Secret Self, Embodying the Secret Self, and these are all practical guidance for self realization of the true nature of life. So I think it is better to call Christopher a total well being coach or a personal trainer and a meditation teacher. And I would like to start with just one paragraph that is appearing in Christopher's website. And I thought, it says it all. I'll read it with your permission, Christopher. It says, society has given you you. All that you are is past memories and artificially projected images, just man made thoughts. This is the torment you as a person experiences daily, the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the fear and confusion, the need to understand and control, the need to get something more and become something more. But yet, what isn't appearing and what also seems to appear as life is a wondrous universal intelligence beyond all comprehension. It is running everything and is totally complete unto itself. The sense of it will blow you away. I think that is beautifully presented, Christopher, and I'll start from there. And it's a in this spiritual world, people enter some kind of spiritual approach or spiritual path after going through immense suffering in life, after realizing that, I have been struggling and I have been busy with my work, I have been busy with my family, and finally I'm here, but I'm still not happy. So what you have mentioned there is absolutely true. Now the ones who want to come out of this, they reach you and ask you, Christopher, help me. How do I see what you are saying in this, the universal intelligence? Help me to see this through. So if I start that as a question, I would like to hear it from you as the introduction. And as we go on, I'll ask rest of the questions.
Very good. Um, well, first I have to say thanks for that introduction. And although I have to say that as time has gone on, I really question maybe some of those things that were put previously. I really can't say what I am or say that I am doing anything in particular. And no title seems to fit anymore. So I have kind of rejected many titles and descriptions. And but the second part of what you said, which was written um, in terms of this artificial self, that is essentially what I'm pointing out. I'm just pointing out that what I came to see is that there's really two states, and one is an artificial state, and the other is a natural state or a natural intelligence, or maybe sometimes I call it universal intelligence. Because to me, the force that is at the source of all life and that makes, the wind blow and the trees grow and a seed grow is not different than the intelligence that is making that body breathe, making this body breathe, making the cells regenerate, the heartbeat, the neurons fire off in the brain. By which intelligence is that happening? Many people, we've been taught that you're the one that is in control, you're the one that is making things happen. And you've got to get what you want to make you be happy, what you think is going to make you happy, and you've got to try and avoid those things that you think is going to make you unhappy. And that becomes the pursuit of most people's life. They're constantly trying to rearrange, modify, change, alter whatever is taking place, whatever is unfolding in this immediate instant, you know. And to me, that becomes the torment. That's the torment that is experienced, the unhappiness, the suffering, the sorrow. And it's kind of like a cycle, a pattern. And, you know, I really can't say that this can be figured out. It can't be understood at all what you are or what life is, what this intelligence is. That's the difficulty of the communication. For all the words that we say and everything, all the conversations, can it be really understood? No, it cannot be understood. It cannot be figured out. At best, there is a kind of a hinting or a pointing out of the limitation of what we would try to use to understand life, which is only the mind, which is only thought. We're so accustomed in society, we've been taught that we've got to try and figure everything out and use thought to understand, to categorize, to interpret, to conceptualize um, existence, who you are. So this becomes the self knowledge, and the self knowledge can extend to spiritual knowledge as well. And so, through all this spiritual knowledge and these concepts, there can be a kind of resting on that, as if that can give you somehow this wondrous intelligence. So I'm often find myself at a loss for words, and in all honesty, I can say I don't know what has happened or is happening, but yet somehow we're communicating, somehow a conversation is happening, and we're describing things, pointing out these things, pointing out this artificial state, this artificial nature, the limitation of it, and somehow trying to point out that which is natural before the artificial, you know. So, this has been created. We can go further into that. I'm happy to go deeper into that, into this artificial state, and maybe to explore that a little bit further.
Yeah. Now, this might probably give the impression for the viewers that, right, it's because I have expectations. I am longing for certain things. It may be relationship, it may be your wealth related, it may be, your relations or whatever expectations. Naturally, of course, even theoretically or academically, we can accept logically that, your expectations can, in turn cause this internal unhappiness, unsatisfactoriness. Now, if you, for instance, tell people, okay, drop the exchange expectations, and that also doesn't make sense because expectations are also part of this life and the existence, the expectations. Okay, you plan for tomorrow, you plan for next year, things like that. Now, is the expectation the problem, or is there anything else?
Well, the expectation is coming because there is an insistence that something in the future is going to be able to give you something, and that there is such a thing as the future, and so the emphasis is on the future. This is, of course, what society has taught. Society has taught to base everything in a linear sense, past and
mm,
future, to remember past achievements, past experiences, to want to gather a sense of identity from that, and then to project that past into the future, to imagine, to hope, to envision something more, something greater. This is when I was a child at school. Two main questions that were asked to me, which started to create this kind of linear sense of time, was what do you want to be when you grow up, and what do you want to do when you grow up? And before that point, there was no sense of time. There was no focus on that. There was no emphasis on that.
mm,
There was simply the immediacy of life itself, and the satisfactory nature of that, the fullness of that, the wholeness of that. But as soon as these thoughts were being entertained, what should I do when I grow up? What should I be when I grow up? Now we're starting to go into this imaginary future, and you start to create all these images. And then from the images, the expectations come, because there is this strong sense of, I desire something more and to become something more, which essentially is coming from a dissatisfaction
mm,
of this instant right now. It's saying, really, this instant is not enough. And naturally, that's going to be the case because through the artificial person, the experience of the artificial person is a sense of separation, is a sense of lack, and naturally in that there's going to be restless desire for constantly wanting something more and more. So there's no way through that to be in the immediacy and to be satisfied in this instant. There's always going to be some restless pursuit to get to something else, and so naturally lots of expectations begin to form, as if we can know what the
mm,
so-called next moment will bring, even though there is no next moment. But we, as if we can know that, you know, and so then there is an imagination, always going to the imagination of it. And to me, this is where the expectations come. And then there is a grasping to the fulfillment of an expectation and saying that this must happen for me to be satisfied,
mm,
for me to feel whole and complete. And who's saying that? Essentially, who is saying that is the artificial person.
mm. I love this word immediacy. Now, actually, when you say it, it resonates here. Actually, I can't describe. Anyway, now, may I ask this critical question? Now, this is what I'm sure many people want to know. These thoughts, they come, no one knows where they come from. Nor can you stop them from coming in. And okay, later you will say the thoughts are coming from the past or they are coming from future expectation, but the thoughts do arise. Now, many who go through this kind of suffering and this traumatic situation, they always say these thoughts, I have no control over these thoughts. And they are the ones, a thought comes and then it stirs some feelings, and then you are unhappy. How do you deal with these thoughts?
Mhm. Well, to me, the whole problem is that there is an approach of how to deal with the thoughts in the first place. And the approach of how to deal with the thoughts in the first place is a thought. So, how can
Mhm.
you stop a thought with a thought? You know, um, surely you just leave it alone. And so the constant need to try to get rid of thoughts or to escape thoughts is a thought which only maintains thought and keeps it in place, and therefore keeps the whole game going on and on and on, going round in a circle. This is the circle that is experienced through the person, where it's going from one thought to another thought to another thought to another thought, and it has no way of stopping because it is made of thoughts. The moment that it stops, it comes to an end.
True. Now, okay, how would you sort of advise as a general approach, the one who has not done any kind of, now even non-dual message, although people are trying to grasp it, that there is no person and this is just oneness, and these are all words, for people who are trying to grasp this.
Yeah.
And so anyone who wants to enter some kind of an attempt, as I mean, you're quite right. I mean, this thought again, for you to control is, again another thought that says so. So, as a first step, how would you advise the people who come to you? I mean, each person must be having different circumstances, different scenarios. They have gone through different individualistic kinds of, but as a general advice, what would you, so when you say it, irrespective of, how it is perceived here, it can carry some kind of a resonance. I know. I mean, I feel that the people who are watching this eventually, once it is uploaded, they will try to hear from you. Hey, I would like to experience what you have experienced, something like that.
Mm. Well, there's a problem with that, and that is that life, nature, is not an experience. Because what creates experience is thought.
Mm,
Thought creates experience. Experience is memory. And so the formation of an experience comes through the various thoughts that are being believed. So, like a child that is taught that Santa Claus is real, they
mm,
for them, what we call Christmas, the experience of it is vastly different than the adult that is not under that illusion, you know. And, of course, there are 8 billion different people that, if they're operating through a belief system, through thought, then they're all having a slightly different experience. But beyond that, if I can say that, beyond the artificial, there is the natural, and the natural is not an experience. So one, it
mm,
is to see that it's not an experience. It's not something that's going to be an experience. If something is an experience, it means it can come and it can go. And if
mm,
it comes and goes, it is not. It is something that is just fleeting. You're not going to be able to hold on to an experience or maintain an experience. So to even look for an experience is kind of looking in the wrong direction, maybe you could say.
mm, mm,
And so, trying to use thought, it's also seeing the limitation of thought, the limitation of the ability to understand. You see, once you understand that you can't understand, then where does that leave you? What is it that remains then? You can't go any further, surely. Surely there is no ability to go any further than that once you see the limitation of thought. Thought is limited. Thought cannot encapsulate the unlimited or the infinite. It can never make contact with life itself, because thought is of the past, so therefore it is dead, and whatever is dead cannot make contact or meet that which is living or alive.
mm,
What is alive is there's an immediacy there, and so someone, as a thought, trying to get somewhere and use thought to get somewhere, is only in the way, but yet the life is immediately there. So there's like that body right there, what we call the body. There's some vibrant life there. And yet, very little attention might be being paid to that vibrant life. The attention is in thought and using thought to try to get to something. And that's where the problem is. That's the one that's in the way. When really there's a sensitivity there, there's a common natural sense there, um, a powerful, vibrant sensitivity. And yet, it's can't be seen, because through the lens of thought, it's only in its own imagination. It's only in its own world, like a bubble. So it never can meet that. That living intelligence there, that vibrant intelligence, is not trying to get somewhere. It's not trying to become something. It's not trying to understand anything. It simply is. So the thought to try to get somewhere is only, it's like a form of doing, trying to, being a doer, trying to get somewhere. But you can't do being. You can only be being. So being is just being. It's not something that can be done, you know. The thought is trying to do it. So then this living intelligence is completely missed. It's so obvious and it's so immediate, you know.
When you say living intelligence now, these my personal experience, Rishabh, now. When we were kids, you look at the rainbow, or you look at the moon, or if you see a tree, you want to just run there and climb. And then you are let loose, in a playground, and you want to run from one end to another. And these are all natural movements. And somehow, as we entered the commercial world, or the family life, and then so on, when we look back, we want to ask ourselves, how did we miss all these things? We were very close to everything. But I do not know whether what I'm saying is directly related to this universal intelligence you are referring to. Now, my question is, can we get back to that by simply turning attention to ourselves? As you said, this intelligence of the body itself, perhaps, might uh, tell you something. So this turning attention to oneself, will that help in a broader sense?
Mm. The problem is that the thought is always interpreting. So the
Mm,
person is always trying to interpret everything that's happening. So even if it tries to bring attention towards what it thinks of as the body, which of course is just another concept, uh, it will distort that. It's like right now sitting, what is the sensation of sitting? Well, the thought comes in, it starts to describe, starts to interpret, and it says there's a separation. It says what I am is within the confines of this so called body, and that the
mm,
seat is different than this body. So, but
mm.
actually, if there is no interpretation, then where can you find the division between the sensation of the so-called body and the chair? It,
Absolutely,
it will
yeah.
not be there. It will not be there. It is only there
Mm,
if there is the constant interpretation of thought. And so this is why I say that this body is really a universal intelligence, like a universal intelligence, because you can't separate it from the rest of existence. The body is made of the same atoms, so-called atoms, so-called matter of the earth and of every other body, and the
mm,
water of the earth and every other body, and the air that was sharing the same
mm.
oxygen. So all the elements are there within the body, and it is the same within the whole of nature and the whole of the universe. There's some intelligence, some force that is animating, you could say,
Mm.
and there is whatever is what we call nature. And it's only the artificial that creates a kind of smokescreen to that.
Exactly. I still remember once I was looking in the sky. There was an eagle, and the eagle is gliding. Actually, he doesn't fly. He glides, and I was watching, and I was thinking, come on, if there is no wind, there's no way he could glide, and then aim at the prey or whatever. And for that little moment, I saw that it just the same. You can't just separate the bird from the air, although you didn't see the air. It just perhaps it's a knowledge. Nevertheless, it uh, like it explains what you're saying now. I'm sitting here and I feel the sensation. All there is the sensation. Now, if I go to interpret, I will say there's a chair and I'm sitting and my body is here. Is that the right approach you know to understand the universal intelligence? Like every moment you just You do away with the thought and feel with the sensation and the, kind of uh, the immediacy, as you say.
Mm. You see, you mentioned the word earlier, steps, uh, and when really you could say that the first step is the last step. You know, there is really no steps to towards it. Like somehow it is all shaken off. You know, purged out of the system. This, which is what it's the past. The the person who most people think and imagine themselves to be, experience themselves to be, is really just a product of the past. And the past
Mm,
is
mm,
being constantly remembered. And each time a being wakes up in the morning, they are remembering, which is the putting together of memory of who they think that they are, the sense of identity that the world has taught them that they are. And so they're doing that constantly. You know, there's so much energy being put into that constantly, constantly, constantly.
mm,
And yet all the time, the immediacy of nature and this natural, universal intelligence, whatever you want to call it, which cannot be understood, is there. It is there, you know. And but the emphasis is in the mind. It's in the dream world of thought, of story, of a plot line, in a sense of linear time, bound by time. So that's where all the emphasis is. And so one is constantly remembering who they think they are. And this is really the putting together of thought, you know. And thought is artificial. We've taken this on. What is thought? We're using the English language right now. So we're creating the meaning based on what we've been taught about what these words mean. And but actually, if we didn't know, I don't know, let's say Russian, and somebody was speaking Russian, what would we hear?
mm,
All we
mm,
would
mm,
hear would just be sound. There'd be
mm,
no meaning to it because we don't understand what those sounds mean because the meanings are just an agreed upon interpretation. So mankind has come together and has agreed upon, oh, this sound, which is just a sound, means this. And then when we
mm,
take that meaning to be what reality is or what we are, all of a sudden we create all these distortions of imagination, all these pictures and images, and then the natural, the immediate, is lost. One is then just operating through the past constantly. You see, and that becomes the cycle and the circle that one is constantly moving in. So there's a limitation to that, and to understand the limitation of that, to understand the limitation of that cycle, is is I think really all that can be understood. Somehow that comes to an end. Maybe once that is understood, the limitation of that, maybe then it drops and it is purged out of the system. What happened here
mm,
is in seeing that limitation, all of the past was just purged out of the system.
mm, mm,
Not that that can't be accessed, right? Because of course, right now we're using the
mm,
past, right? To get onto this call, we need the knowledge. We
mm.
need that past knowledge to know how to operate this phone call, this internet call together, to go about daily life and tasks. We need the knowledge. We must use the knowledge. But the self knowledge, to say that this piece of knowledge is what I am, or to say that it is life itself, that's where the real distortions come in.
But I noticed that you are using the language very carefully because every word you say, it's there is a kind of a, it carries something. So the listener, by simply now, while listening to you, although you are trying your best to explain, the language itself seems to be a barrier. Now, for instance, what you just said about the past, you are carrying a huge baggage. That's true. And at the same time, you need to access certain things from the past to carry on. And if you tell someone, okay, drop the past and drop the expectation which you don't even know next moment what will happen. So how can you even, think
Mhm.
about, years to come? That's true. But that becomes like more theoretical, you just drop the past. But in reality, you can, if you look around, you can say people practically, even when you talk to people, you can see there's so much, what you hear, it's coming from the story. I mean, more than the past, their own stories,
Mm.
it's something.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of kind of insisting, although, I'm not, you know, to have some a few examples, at least one or two, that would help the audience to I mean, I understand either you get it or you don't get it. That's what you what you probably mentioned. But at least a couple of examples that might help them uh, to at least this is what I haven't done. This
Mm.
is what I never thought about, or this area I never imagined. Something like that.
You see, the issue is I can see that I'm not under any illusion that anybody can understand this or that this will make any sense.
Mm,
It's, as you say, the words are just, at best, they are hinting, maybe. They can hint and kind of, but in terms of understanding, in terms of trying to figure it out, in terms of coming to some kind of mental paradigm of what this is, what this natural intelligence is, which is very obvious and very simple. It's like, it's right there. It's it's not something hidden. It's not something mysterious. Um, it's very simple, very obvious, and but it's completely missed because the constant need to try and understand it through some kind of mental structure is the one that is in the way. So, so when I look and I look at anyone, I don't see that there is someone there that needs to change or needs to understand. Deeper than that, I don't see that there is anybody there as a separate artificial person. There's this vibrant organism there, you know? So the thought that they are there and that they've got to do something to get somewhere, as I say, is the very thing that is in the way. It's like it can't get beyond itself. That it's the imagination. They're imagining themselves. Now, if they can understand that, if that can be somehow, if that is seen in some way, then maybe that can drop and come to an end. But it cannot be ended by itself, because how can the past get rid of the past? The only cure you could say for the past is that which is
mm,
immediate, not even the present, because the present is the idea of one present moment and then the next moment and then the next moment. There is just an immediacy. To me, past, present, and future are all linear time. But there's that which is immediate, nature is immediate, and thought is always in time because it takes time, right? The moment that you think something, in a sense, you've missed the immediate. So the instant of thinking to understand this, to try to get here, to try to get there, it's already been missed. in,
mm, mm.
in a sense.
True enough.
That is living through the past. It's not that people have a story that they are stuck in. They are the story. They are the story. It's not that people are in an illusion. They are the illusion in terms of how they experience themselves to be as this separate person that is in a state of lack that must control things to try to get what it wants and become more and to try to protect what it fears to lose, you know? And that becomes the game and the cycle. And if that can somehow be seen, maybe it has the chance to kind of come to an end. It kind of what's the word? It begins to lose its own momentum, its own steam, because it's got like a
Mm.
momentum to it. So much energy is being put into that
Oh yeah,
because it's believed to be real
that's
and true. Oh yes, I am real. I am true. I am separate. I am
mm,
lacking something. I must get something more, and I must become something more. And I've done this in the past, and I've got to try to be more present now, and then I've got to try to do something in the future. All of that is giving so much energy to it, which creates more and more momentum of thought. It's kind of like, you know, if you take a bicycle and you turn it upside down and you spin the wheel, you spin one of the wheels. If you spin it, it will eventually start to slow down, and
mm,
it eventually comes to a stop. Now, that's only if you stop spinning it. If you keep spinning it, it's just going to keep going and keep going
mm,
and keep going, isn't it? So
mm,
there's an effort being made to keep spinning it. So therefore, it keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. But if you stop spinning it, it eventually comes to a rest by itself. It eventually stops by itself, you know. But if I give a practice, if I give a method, I could give many practices, many methods, could give a
mm,
teaching, could give this, could give that. It only adds to that momentum. It only adds to the momentum. It's just a different kind of momentum, or just a different kind of direction in something that is really, you could say, directionless.
mm. Uh,
Any movement to get to is a movement away from.
mm, mm.
You know, we can say, um, and it's a form of trying to escape in a very subtle way. To me, it seems that the trying to escape, the trying to change and modify, is the trap. Is like a trap. You know, this is the thought trap.
Christopher, now let me put it this way. Now, if you speak another time to another audience, it will be the same way. Perhaps you will change a few words here and there, but it will be the same version that comes out of you. Now, for you to say this kind of expression, one might ask, Christopher, you would have experienced something, you would have seen this through. Then the next question is, what did you do? Then, obviously, you may have looked at things differently, or you may have looked at yourself, or
Mm,
you may have had some kind of analysis within, because you speak like this. Again, I'm coming to the same question that I asked earlier, but for you to come up with this um, kind of a version or idea or suggestion,
mm,
you yourself would have gone through some kind of a resonance, some understanding, or some seeing through at least.
mm. You see, I'm only trying to, I'm simply trying to do the best that I can with the words that we have available, which is so limited, right? You know, again, I'm under no illusion that this can be understood, that this can really make any sense. Um, Maybe at best, as you said earlier, you used the word resonance. Maybe at best there is some kind of resonance, there is a sense, but I can't say that it makes any kind of intellectual sense, or that it can be understood in that way. So, you know, we're all trying to, well, I'll speak for myself, I guess, which I'm trying to use the words the best that I can. But in the illusory sense of being a separate person, yeah, of course, there were many things that were being done, right? The person was trying to do this and try to do that and practice this and practice that, and but you know, it can be it's recognized that that was only a perpetuation of that cycle in some way. And I would, I guess, spare anyone the arduous um, effort of trying to go through some kind of you know uh, all of these different things, doing this and doing that to try to get to somewhere that is only going to reinforce that you know mirage of the person. You know, when when that which is natural is already here. You know, these are the again. This is all the spiritual knowledge that we have. It's like, how do you practice being yourself? How can you practice being natural? I don't even want to say self, but how can you practice being natural? The more you try to practice being natural, the more unnatural you are. You know,
Yeah, that's true.
it's like the centipede. You know, the I've got sometimes it's like probably some people have heard this story before of the philosophical frog and the centipede, and the centipede is walking along with its 100 legs, uh, in perfect timing with one behind the other, and the philosophical frog, he can't understand that. How is it possible? It's blowing his mind. How is it possible he can walk in perfect timing when with one leg behind the other, having 100 legs?
Mm,
He's thinking
mm,
I'd be tripping up all over the place. So he asks the centipede, and the centipede says, "Well, I've never really thought about it before." And now, when the centipede starts to walk off, now he's thinking about it, and he's tripping up all over the place. And he says to the frog, "You idiot!" He says, "Never ask me that question ever again." So this is kind of, if I can say it, it's kind of like that. It's like there's something so natural, so effortless, so flowing. There's no separate, isolated self or person there that I have found. I don't know if anybody else has found some kind of separate, isolated person there. And that's the one that is kind of getting in the way. This is the artificial that is kind of, it's like a laptop or a computer that has come out of its factory default setting and it's operating perfectly. And then you
mhm,
start downloading all these different programs onto it. And obviously, what starts to happen is those programs begin to interfere and change the functioning, the natural functioning of that computer. And so, in the same way, you could say that this body is like a kind of natural computer in a way, or this kind of natural mechanism, organism, and it functions perfectly, harmoniously. But yet, when all of this artificial information is taken on, this idea of being a separate person, the idea of time, all this self knowledge starts to interfere with it, gets in the way, and then you're tripping up all over the place.
mm.
you know.
I was watching once this, or what we call the murmuration, all those birds, like they're moving like clouds. And I was thinking, come on, imagine these birds, if they have to plan, if they have to do all that to move like that, sometimes like a cloud, and sometimes they crisscross all that. Absolutely, it's more or less the same. Actually, Christopher, I had a lot of questions to ask you, but because we had a flow and you brought us in a particular way, and most of these questions were already, have been answered because every time I hear you, you are trying to sort of, it is already, it's right under our nose, some kind of a, so
Mm.
any attempt to look for it,
Mm.
you are once again in that trap.
I can only say honestly that that is, or as close as I can. I can only say that, or point that out. To speak in any other way would seem to be misleading, and
Mm,
would seem to be, I guess, using the language in the most distorted way possible, maybe. Um, so it's not uncommon for that to happen. and and again, as I say, I don't think anyone needs to really understand or can
mm,
understand um, this. There's there's life there. There's something vibrant. There's something alive. There's something very sensitive. There's a sense, a common sense, uh, that is there. And for some reason, the emphasis is all in thought and thinking and trying to figure it out. And if I just take on more knowledge and more information, you see, people have gone from the societal information knowledge to now what they would call spiritual knowledge. So
mm,
from what kind of happened here, and I think what seems to happen is, society passes on all of this knowledge of who you are and what you should become and what you should be striving for, the measure of success and happiness and self. And somewhere along the line, people get disillusioned with that. and they start to recognize that they can't, they're dissatisfied moving in that direction. They can't seem to find what it is they're looking for. They're looking for an answer. They have questions, and a question is a quest. They're trying to get somewhere, and so they're wanting answers. The answers that they've been given already are not satisfactory enough. So they start looking for other answers. So then naturally they go into religion, or they go into spiritual knowledge, esoteric knowledge, occult knowledge, and they think, okay, maybe this is where I'm going to find the answers.
mm,
And then what happens is people look at that stuff, and then certain things, they take that on, and it seems to satisfy or bring an answer that feels more, seems to make more sense to them than what society was saying. And so then they come to conclusions, and they rest in those conclusions. And then they try to live through that knowledge. And if you think of the word knowledge, no ledge, like a ledge to stand on. So it's a ledge of knowing. So what you know, you can only experience what you know. You can only experience what you have knowledge of.
mm,
But this life is not an experience, so you can't know it. If you know it, it's not life. You've turned it into knowledge, which means you've turned it into mind, memory, thought, and then it's not what it is, you see. So people have come to new answers and new conclusions. And there's a tendency to want to rest on that. And then when, maybe even without knowing it, there's a need, a want to then just confirm what the conclusions that they've already come to, you know, because this is the nature of the artificial self trying to reinforce itself and keep itself in place. It looks around and it wants to just have confirmation of what it already thinks that it knows, the conclusions it's already come to. But what I found is all of that must go. All of that must be purged out of the system. Not that, again, that knowledge is not somehow there to, we can use the knowledge. The knowledge comes by itself, actually. In fact, the moment will bring it. As we are conversating right now, this is just be this is just coming out.
mm,
All of this stuff is just coming
mm.
out. There's
Yeah.
no special kind of planning or pre-thought that is happening with this. It's the words are just coming out by themselves because it's
Mm,
been put in there. However, there is, I'm not under any illusion that the knowledge itself is life, is this natural intelligence, is this so-called existence. And that's where the problem comes in for people, is when they think that the knowledge is that. They've come to certain conclusions, and the conclusions they think are that, you see. And even the experiences that they've had. If it is an experience, it comes. If it is an experience, it can also go. You cannot, there cannot be a constant experience, you know. So the insistence of saying that that is life is only what keeps that cycle going of being still feeling like something is missing. Keeps the person in place, you know. The person then just becomes a spiritual person. They've gone from being a
mm.
societal person, now they are
Yeah.
a spiritual person. They've gone from being a societal identity, now they are a spiritual identity. Both
Mm.
identities, both persons are still the same person, still, you could say, a trap.
Um, Yusuf, actually, I think because although you use the words carefully, I think that the your responses have been comprehensive enough the way I comprehend it. But this is basically my last question. Now, when you hear a lot of spiritual speakers, there are modern spiritual speakers, then there are radicals, non-dual, so many out there, and they give examples, and some call this like a dream, and some are saying this is just oneness. There is no separation, and there are others who give a direct message like there is no one inside this body, controlling us. And then there are others who are sort of citing like a cinema screen, and they say, it is only the screen, but whatever that is appearing are appearances only. And so these are many kind of illustrations and the examples they give. Now, eventually, all these examples are given to establish, or at least to say that there is only life, because it came out of you also a couple of times. There is only life. And then anything to be added is a thought driven idea. Is that the way I understood? Because in spite of all these examples, finally, what is left, as you said, if you purge everything out,
Hmm.
what is left is just life. And then there is nothing you can kind of elaborate on that.
Hmm. You see, this is what the society has done. It has filled everybody with so many ideas to the point where everybody's become full, and you got to empty all of that stuff out. You know, um, but there's a tremendous fear that comes with that, because the fear is, well, if I empty that out, then what happens to me, and how will I function? That's a big one I hear a lot. How will I
It
function? How will
is.
I function? Well, you won't know. You won't know that it's to the person it's a risk. You see, but
Mm,
not that the person can do it in the first place. But so it's completely full, and so what somehow it must empty that out.
mm.
But if you can you just repeat that part again at the end? I just lost what you were saying there.
I know what I was saying is, if you purge all these beliefs and concepts and everything out, what is left would be just life. If at all you want to say something, it's just life. It's aliveness.
Mm,
And
yes.
what happens, something like that. But there is a great intelligence in that.
There's an there's an unimaginable intelligence there, isn't there, that's making everything
Mm,
happen. Who's
mm,
making the body breathe? Who's
mm.
making the heart beat? The cells
Absolutely. Mm,
regenerate, right? The wind blow, the grass grow, the earth spin. By which force? What intelligence is doing that? The society is taught that you, as a separate person, is the one that is in control
mm,
and can make things happen and must make things happen. So there's tremendous pressure then put on the person, and that's part of its suffering. And that actually suppresses the energy there. The suppression of energy is only what leads to the building of the suffering. The suppression of the energy is what leads to the building of the suffering. This intelligence wants to be completely, in its natural state, it's completely unleashed. The energy is unleashed because it's not being bound in any way. It's all of the
mm,
thought and all of these programs, conditions. What is a condition? It's a limitation, which are putting it in a straitjacket. so so it goes around in a straitjacket, suppressed, and so of course there's going to be a lot of suffering there. The energy wants to flow through, wants to move through, but if there's something in the way of that, then how can it flow through? It's like a river where there's if you put a dam in the way, you've now cut off that flow. Or if you put lots of debris in the way of it, something's in the way. And it reminds me of there's I think a Chinese proverb that says, "When the eye is unobstructed, there is sight." So,
mm.
what do you have to do? What must you add to get sight? Nothing. Nothing to add to get sight. Only to remove the obstruction. And what if the obstruction is really a mirage, an illusion? If the obstruction was real, then now you have to go to work to move that obstruction because it's a real obstruction. It takes effort then to move it. But what if the obstruction is just really an illusion or a misperception,
Yeah.
then how much effort does it take
Mm.
to remove that
Nothing.
obstruction? And what must be added for there to be sight? No, the sight will return because now the imaginary obstruction has gone.
Mm.
Maybe we can leave it there.
Yeah, it's very clear, and it's clearer. So thank you again, Christopher, and for our audience, I will be stating Christopher's website. So there are ways in which you could seek appointments with Christopher, and all the details are given on that website, which I'm going to mention in my description. So, Christopher, on behalf of Sri Lankans and on behalf of myself, let me thank you once again for joining us. And this it's very refreshing, and it's very refreshing for us in this part of the world. So, I will later on. I'll do something in. I'll translate this into our language as well. So, thanks a lot indeed.
Oh, thank you, Vipula. Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to speak to your audience. Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right.